at exactly 7 o'clock.
Nice.
Community Housing Board. Woohoo.
Cutest board on the island.
That's right. That's right, Maria. So the first thing is we are going to review. We're going to review and hopefully approve the minutes from January 12th. So let's see. So I know we got these on email, but if everyone just wants to take a look and just see if anything, if you have any edits.
Motion to approve as written.
I approve.
A second, okay. Is it all in favor? I think so.
All in favor.
All right, approved. All right, cool. Amber.
Okay,
I know, sorry,
switch gears.
sorry, I should, our town liaison update.
So we opened and closed the public hearing on the community housing plan on the 31st. So we didn't do a resolution formally adopting it, so we'll do that on the 28th at our next meeting.
Great,
Because we oftentimes, we want to hear any public comment before we
Right.
do any adopting. So we thought there'd be comment, and there really wasn't.
there he is,
Surprising,
Mr. America.
considering the
Exactly.
chatter.
I know,
So there was no comment, so we could have adopted it because there was nothing to make us put the brakes on it, but, so we will adopt that on the 28th. But the public hearing is closed, so it will be the plan.
great.
Great.
And apologies that I wasn't there. There was a snowstorm and all the planes had to be de-iced at JFK. So that's where I was. It was cool.
Obviously, and I think Maria might have been online.
Yeah, rad. You got it all.
I forgot
I feel
about
like somebody else was.
Well, you know what?
it.
Yeah. I was like, I'm present, so I did notice that. Yes.
Cool. Well, I have an item that I'm so excited to talk about. We have got word from New York, New York State. So this fall, I talked to the Community Development Corporation of Long Island, and we worked together to put in for a grant from the state of New York, which was pretty much a long shot. There's only 10 grants that they gave out for the whole state of New York. And this is a grant that is, well, I'll tell you the dollar amount, which is the most exciting part. It is $2 million for Shelter Island.
Awesome.
And it will be towards basically either retrofitting, building, or getting up to code ADUs that either are already on the island or creating them. It is a straight grant. It is $125,000 per recipient,
Oh, wow. That's
which is pretty exciting. And Gwen O'Shea from the CDC-LI is going to join us next month and kind of run us through some of the details. But I wanted to kind of get this out here because I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
So it is for the homeowners who receive the grant need to be within the median income. So these are, middle-class homeowners. She'll kind of go through the exact parameters. And the reason I really wanted to try to partner with the CDC-LI is not only are they a really respected nonprofit, but they are also a community lender. And $125,000 is a lot of money objectively, but also building out here is very expensive. So they are going to be able to provide bridge financing, potentially up to 200 at very low rates, because again, they're a nonprofit, they're community lender. So she's going to kind of talk to us about how that would work.
Great.
So, we're really, really excited. So there's, like I said, there's only 10 grants up for the whole state. And, like I said, I thought we were like a super, super long shot. So I had to like talk Gwen. I mean, well, I've been talking to Gwen over the course of a year. And so I was really excited that she and I and her team wrote the proposal for the grant. So
That's great, fantastic.
yeah.
Fantastic news.
Yeah, so it's really
exciting.
exciting. So I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit of details. Again, Gwen is going to come to our next meeting to run us through the actual, so it has been announced at the state level who's gotten it, and she's going to run us through the contract at that point, right? So with all the specifics of how it's going to kind of roll out. The things I think that are going to be really important for us to know is that there is a time limit with this.
Okay.
So once this gets signed, we have 2 years to get this money to homeowners,
Wow.
okay? Now, if
That's
we are
fine.
able to get this out, there is a possibility to go back to the state for more money. So,
Like if we use that 2 million.
correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so I think that this is gonna be, this seems like especially after like our outreach around the housing plan, this seems just like really aligned with a lot of the stuff that we heard, which is just like private homeowners kind of being part of the solution. This grant is not going to be administered by the town, it's going to be administered by the CLI. So it will be our role and really kind of trying to basically help homeowners to see if they're eligible. So whether that's helping them to see if they're a good candidate for zoning or financially. And so we can kind of talk a little bit more about what that process
Yep.
might look like. But I think it's going to be really exciting. So again, so that works out to be 16 families.
So is it 125, is that a max or is that the number? Right.
125 is the max of the grant.
So you could get a $50,000 grant.
Exactly.
Actually,
Yeah.
And do more than 16.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you could be, that's the max. So you've got the 2 million to spend. And like I said, the CDC-LI has generously agreed to provide piggyback financing. And so we're going to kind of talk through, that would be financing. That's not a straight grant, but if a little bit of money was the difference between getting something done.
And for that you said, would that take you up to 300 total?
It would take you up to 200, I believe.
200 total. So it was 75,000 of
Bridge.
a bridge plus 125.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And these would be sort of affordable units in
Yeah.
perpetuity. They'd be in that program.
Well, no, let's talk about, she's gonna walk us through the contract that they're gonna bring down from the New York State. So I believe how it currently reads, and again, is that it's 10 years that they have to sign on to have an affordable rental. But we have explored the idea of how do we, that's what kind of New York State says. But I do think that there was potentially some opportunities around that bridge financing to make it affordable longer. Or the other things, depending on what the permitting looks like, it could be, I don't know if we wanted to use a community housing floating zone to make it possible. And then that would make it have to be affordable in perpetuity. So there's a couple different ways to go at this. I think one is potentially through the bridge financing. The other one would be like kind of a zoning.
I mean, is that 10 years a minimum from New York State to qualify? And could we put other stipulations on it or?
Well, the New York State is a minimum. And since the money is coming directly from New York State, they kind of get to say. So it would only be, again, the only other controls that I could see on it from the town level would be something around zoning. Like I said, if you needed a community housing floating zone to do it, like that would be a way.
Yeah.
Or, Gwen and I have just kind of talked about a little bit, but I think it's more appropriate for us to talk about as a group, if they were able to tie that bridge financing to
Yeah.
a longer horizon for the affordability or perpetuity. So I think that those are all options.
I mean, the other thing, of course, is depending what happens over the course of the next 5 to 7 years, there could possibly be more affordable housing legislation that comes on the state level that could benefit all of us in terms of how these kinds of grants could be used and what kind of building we could end up doing. So things could change over the course of time as well.
Yeah, no, and there's, I mean, and that, to that, this is specific, so this was in last year's budget, like, this is
Right.
packed up and done, but there
That I
is
know.
other stuff. One of the other things that Gwen and I were talking about, I had a call with her on Monday, and this is like all still fluid, it's in the governor's budget, and so for this year, I don't know, there's actually been like a lot of like feelings and hoopla about basically, she has a proposed increase for all across the state in housing. I think Amber might line, is it like 30%? It's like something wild.
Yeah.
It's like 30% or something is in her draft budget, which is a lot. And one of the things that Gwen and I were talking about, because I know that we're concerned with housing. There's also a lot of folks that are concerned about density and like what would 30% looks like. And so the other thing that I think is relevant in here is the current information that we have is that affordable units will count 2 for 1 towards that density requirement. So that is also something that I thought was really interesting that she shared.
Can you tell me again, it's the Community Development Corporation of Long Island?
Yes,
Okay.
CDCLI.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Gwen O'Shea is the executive director, and she'll be zooming in on our next meeting. And then the other thing I just like kind of wanted to like I said, I just wanted to put this out here so that we could really be thinking about it. Once those contracts get signed, the clock starts ticking. So the things that I think that we should really kind of be thinking of that Gwen had brought up was doing basically some public information sessions.
Yes.
Right? So she and some of the members from the CDCLI would come out, we'd have talk to people about what it is, and just kind of get the information out there. The thing that I think would really be the charge of this board is to figure out, and I think that this actually ties in with some of the work that you guys are doing on that pamphlet, and we can figure out how that works, is to figure out actually how to pre-vet people, right? Because our zoning requirements are so stringent, it's really important. And the application process it's a state grant, like, you know what I mean? It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're vetting candidates that we know are going to get, at least we have a reasonable idea that are going to get past zoning before we make them do this whole thing. So thinking about how to make our current zoning laws, like getting those out there to people so they know like, oh, I'm potentially a candidate, or I'm in the nearshore overlay, like this one's not for me.
Right.
So we'll want to think about how we distribute, like try to get out some information, and then potentially I was thinking, and I'm hoping maybe some of us could like work on this together. Basically, something that she had suggested was maybe even if we had people who thought they were candidates after maybe some of the public information sessions, maybe even doing like short vetting sessions with maybe somebody from the plan, like someone from our board, someone from the planning department, just to even see like, okay, let's see what zone you're in, like, before they take on this application process with CDCLI, so that we can kind of, like, we don't want to waste anybody's time, but we really want to make sure if people.
Would we have a point person that it would come into, even though it's not the town? Maybe the town would have a point person to receive it? I mean, 'cause you want to have some type of process.
Yeah, so this is what I want to work out with. I think our thought, we're going to have to be come with the expertise around zoning and Shelter Island. And so I think for us, it's the really thinking about how that would work. And then when Gwen joins us next month, I'm hoping that we'll be able to like talk it out and figure out what their needs are.
So if I'm eligible, there's a zoning eligibility there's an income eligibility.
Yep.
And I passed those two. And now I get 125,000 max with potentially 75,000 bridge financing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to put up a utility affordable housing auxiliary facility. And does 200,000 get me? Like,
Well,
I have to put
Some
money
people are
in?
gonna have some money. I mean,
Well, here's the thing, is so one of the things, and she's gonna talk about, is because it is state money, so basically, let's say you went through all that process, the state doesn't be like, here you go, David, here's 120. Basically, what
Yeah.
they're gonna do is they're gonna say, okay, who's your contractor? And then they're gonna pay the contractor.
to get it done.
So, one of the things that she did bring up is part of what we'll probably be doing is reaching out to some contractors to see who would be available to do this, because it is a slightly different process because you're not getting paid directly from the client.
Mhm.
You're getting paid from the state, which is a little bit of a pain in the butt. And just if we're being, also you get 125,000, so maybe you can work it out. But it is a little bit different of a process. Like if you just, you get there and you're like, oh, you know what, I want a different finish. They have to price it out to make sure that the grant plus the bridge financing is going to cover the cost. So she can kind of speak a little bit more to the process, because that is definitely what they do.
Is it only for new or could it be for refurbishing?
Both.
Yeah,
both.
Yeah.
The other thing that I had brought up with her, because we had talked about that there was, when we were writing it in the fall, is, there's just so many opportunities with seniors here who don't have appropriate housing. And so how would that work? And so one of the other things that we found out was available, I always think about my parents, right? So they have a really big farmhouse, and it's really steep stairs, mom has a bad knee. If they were, let's say they were to qualify for it, they could make an accessible ADU, and they could be in the ADU, they could rent their home affordably. So I think that also might be a good solution for some.
Increasing housing stock.
Well, and also for the folks to stay here,
Yeah, no, aging in place, the whole
Yeah.
aging in place
So
idea.
there's a lot of flexibility to it
Mhm.
that I think could potentially be interesting.
But if I'm a builder and I say to myself, it's 300,000 to build this plan,
Yeah.
250 for this plan, right? So I probably could create all that
Mhm.
in my head. And if I knew that this program existed, why aren't I knocking on people's doors and saying, right, are you interested in this? Because I can, for you putting in 50,000, I can have you have a rental unit that's going to make you 1,600 a month.
Yeah.
Right, it seems to me we live in how many, 2,500 homes, how many of those homes qualify from a zoning perspective, and then how many work from an income perspective, and then give the builders, it seems to me if they're making 20% of 300,000 on a
But
2% profit
Yeah.
for developer.
No, 200,000 is the total.
Well, right, but it could be a $300,000 structure, right? You the
Yeah.
owner
Yes.
may want a different plan.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't I, if I were a go-getter builder, be knocking on everybody's door that I knew worked within the zoning and say,
What would be the problem with that?
You could.
No, well, that's one reason that the public sessions are so critical. So that we get all this kind of information out to individuals who might be interested, but certainly to people who want to build houses, they need to know too.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it. It would be part of our public information.
They're doing our outreach in that case.
Yeah.
right, they're doing the work for us because why aren't they do a mailer to every house that's
That fits the zoning, yeah.
But here's the thing, I think that, like I said, maybe they're doing our outreach, but the thing I like about it is it's ultimately, the homeowner is going to do it or not. If they don't want to.
and
So I had a question about,
Yeah.
this sort of seems directly related to the program that's been around for, as far as I understand, several years, where there were going to be accommodations made to people wanting to upgrade an ADU, you know, and nobody in the 2 years has signed up to find out about how that happened.
I think you're talking about the community housing license.
Perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah, but the idea was, you know, you get this unit you've got, it hasn't been legalized, and, you know, okay, we're gonna bring it up to code, and the town's gonna help that process and make it easier if that was the barrier. And then it would be in this sort of, you know, area, you know, of rental where it's had to meet some requirements. The question I've heard raised is, does the homeowner have any say in who rents it? So, you know, you've just applied for this grant, you got the money, they built it. Is it out of their hands now? And it's just
That's it.
rented as a
No,
unit?
yeah, no. That's a great question.
I mean, they have to rent it to somebody that's on the list, but do they have to pick, do they have a choice?
Right, is it just like
Very.
the town says, here's who's gonna be living in this property, and
No, I don't see where.
lo and behold, they, you
It's my understanding.
know, I've got history with this person.
It's my understanding, and this might be like a lawyer, like a Stephen Kiley question, but it's my understanding that they have to rent it from somebody on the list. But if they're just like, you know what I mean? Like, just somebody on the list. So, but they don't have to be like, if Susie applies for it and they're like, I don't like.
But I mean,
Susie,
so
then-
there's gonna be a lottery system, right? Or is it anybody on the list can approach any of these homeowners? And
First of all, let's
I may
just
have an
clear
argumentative
out the
tone,
list.
that's just the way I
What is the
talk.
list?
Right, no,
Rental
it-
Registry, yeah.
You have a secondary question to that later on, which is, what if it doesn't work out once a tenant comes in?
Right.
Well, you have
So,
to.
yeah.
Or
Years.
somebody's on the list and they, you know, they're initially turned down and like, tell you what, I'll give you $500 more a month, but I want to live there. And, you know, now they're paying more than.
Well, but hold on. So there's going to be, there's a couple different things here. So the first one is, no, it's great. Cause like stuff goes wrong,
Yeah.
right? So there is going to be a vetting to make sure that the rentals are kept affordable, right? So usually how this works in a situation like this is the CDCLI has to probably come in yearly, or I don't know what their schedule is, just to make sure that there's like a lease that's the affordable rate and that's all like above board and that person's on the list and the, you know, so they check back in, right? I think that there is like, I think it's like the list or family. Again, we should ask Gwen because she's going to know all the details. And yeah, I mean, I guess there'd be like a lease, so you couldn't like skip, but I don't know. I'm not totally sure how it works, if it's like, if you do it as a lottery or whatever. So they've actually done this a lot.
Right.
So I would probably.
So hopefully they
defer.
have more info.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
they would.
they've been doing this almost 20 years, so I think that she would probably be able to present us with a kind of array of processes, and we could kind of figure out what was the most appropriate.
Going back to what you said about public information, one of the things I think that would be important to address in preparing for that would be the tax implications. Because if you're renting, you got to report income, what can you amortize and depreciate over a period of time? How does that affect? I think the tax questions would be something that would be very important for people to understand and know going into this. Because
I would be happy to.
I think, I think we have people who could address some of that. But I think that's.
Yeah, tax implications, like income tax implications.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's important.
How many people, if they have a utility house that they're renting today, are declaring that income?
Well, I think
Some.
some. I think.
But here they.
Here's the thing, they kind of have to.
Right,
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
right, that's the other question, is that part of the reluctance for people to go through the program is now
I don't know, I mean, those of us, like, I rent my house out in the summer, I declare that income, I have to. I mean, how do you, I mean, I guess there's ways that you don't.
You would be surprised at what people.
Yeah, they're.
So I guess I'm just a good person.
You're a good one. There's some naughty kids out there.
And adding to that is, of course, insurance.
Yeah.
What they need to do for.
But these are all things that would be the case if you rented any,
Yes, but if, we should be anticipating
of course.
questions that the
Yeah, I
public would
think-
have as they came in on
Definitely.
this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
tax and insurance are usually questions that people have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that for, I think it'd be tax and insurance. And then also, I think just.
Besides the process.
Yeah, and then also the process of like, how do you find, like, let's say you do it, you're a good fit, you fit the income, like, then what does the process look like? How does it work if you don't have a good tenant? Like, what if they get behind on the rent? Like, how do you deal with, like, what is,
You're a landlord, right? Now, how do you evict somebody?
Yep.
yeah, like.
They party a lot,
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's like talking about probably just in general, kind of what does it mean to be in the business of being a landlord if you've never done that, right? Some just kind of like general information.
I mean, I think the critical thing, though, that we are talking about is making sure that we're talking about year-round rentals. We're not talking about Airbnbs. We're not talking about, vacation rentals. We're talking about actual full-time people who live here and work here rentals. That's what we're interested in providing.
Yeah, and these can only be for year-round. rentals.
which I guess raises another question, which hopefully is Gwen can answer. Prospectively, how do we make sure that it's enforced, that it doesn't do anything else?
Well,
You have to
that's, they
register.
actually have to go in every year and vet it.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
It's every year, every like 18, but like there's like a whole thing that happens with that because they need to keep at least that was my understanding from talking with her, because they need to keep themselves in good standing with the state of New York, which is why they're administering this and the town of Shelter Island does not.
And then, so the person who does it then would also have to be aware that there's a penalty, whatever that penalty may be.
Yeah, yeah. And so my thought is
Carrots still.
yeah, exactly. And there is going to be, so she's going to run us through the prospective contract and we'll kind of take some of that apart. There is also an opportunity if we feel like, she said there might be some room to go back and negotiate a little bit with New York if there's something that's like real wild in the contract that we think is just like not appropriate for the community. So she deals with them all the time. She deals with New York all the time. So I'm hoping that she'll be able to kind of guide us through that process a little bit.
Chris?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna come up to the podium now.
Oh, yeah, okay, so, hi, my name is Chris Diorio. I was wondering, and maybe this is a Gwen question or answer.
Yeah.
But it's 2 years to complete building of it, or it's 2 years for someone to be approved to start doing
My
this?
understanding it's the latter, but again, we gotta
Yes.
but that's also a whole
Yeah.
thing. If you, yeah.
I think it would also be worth looking at, given that accessory dwellings are not allowed in the near shore or peninsular overlays, I think it's worth also looking at on a zoning front where it's allowed, how many pieces of property on Shelter Island are conforming lots? Because that's one of the other big hurdles. So on what you were asking about with the special community housing license, which is the thing to be able to create an ADU on a property that's not otherwise allowed. Right. The hurdle that we've had with people trying to do it is that they were undersized lots.
Yeah.
And that was the complication of it. And I would encourage you all to think about this maybe being an appropriate time to push the town board to think about changing an accessory dwelling unit law to make it so that it's an easier thing to do. Because I think that there's actually not that many properties in the grand scheme of things that would be eligible for this, especially when you couple that with income eligibility to the people that are building it. And how you have to have a 1 acre lot, not in one of the overlays to do it as stands right now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Chris. I think that there is, I think that the town board is aware that there are some deep challenges around how it's set up. And I think for us, it's like that middle ground of just being like, hey, like, look at all the stuff we could do, but this is the zoning as it stands.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's going to be splitting the difference between trying to find a couple folks who fit zoning as is right now. And hopefully if the town board is able to take some action with it and those, you know, if the zoning laws change, then we can go with that. 2 years is a little bit of time. But right now what we'll concentrate on is people that we can get through with the laws as is. And I do know that, yeah, so you're absolutely right. It would be a lot easier if our zoning was a little bit
Yeah.
different.
I would just say 2 years
Yeah.
is not a short amount of time to figure out how you could change that to make it work.
Yeah.
Agree.
And the other thing I would just say is on the bridge funding thing, it makes sense to me trying to tie that to a longer affordability deal. But to think about also like maybe there's some people that are just trying to take the 125 and they have their own way of figuring out the financing on that. But to me, the biggest thing would be how to figure out how our zoning law would line up with making sure that in 10 years, it's not just going to be an Airbnb.
Right.
To me, it's not necessarily the biggest problem if it is market rate, although obviously I would love for it not to be. But that would be, you know, that would just be the next thing that I would really
Yeah.
encourage to think about is making it so the town has something in place so that when that 10 years is up, regardless of how the financing is done, that we have something that keeps that in check.
Yeah, and maybe it's even something where, you know, and we can talk to Gwen about, thank you, Chris, you know, where we asked them to do a community housing license regardless of whether they need it or not to make it, you know?
That's
and ag-
possible.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just how and again, well, there's going to be questions for her of just like what she can tie with it. And then we probably have questions, we'll make Reed come in here and answer questions about how we do the zoning. Yeah.
How does it work with your existing mortgage?
That's a great question. I believe it would be, I don't think you consolidate. I believe it's an additional payment, be like a second mortgage was my understanding, but Gwen can speak to it.
Because that's going to be an issue. I'm not sure that your first mortgage is going to want to accept a second mortgage that has
I think that they'll,
ability.
I think that they will, I think that CDCLI will subordinate to the first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we have Gwen come, we'll be prepared with these kinds of questions for her. Then timeline-wise, in terms of steps of things we want to do,
Yep.
would the next step be planning for a public session so that we're able to answer people's questions? Okay.
Yeah, so we were thinking that when I talked to her, if she wants to kind of have the contract in hand before we schedule something.
Sure.
Just to make sure that we have like the answers for
To
people,
all these questions,
right?
yeah.
And so she's coming our February meeting, so we should have it by then, or we'll have at least the outline, you know, we'll be
This
able
is
to.
February.
This is February.
March, what is time? Flat circle.
Right.
I'm avoiding the corporate tax deadline
Okay.
a month, so
March,
that's,
she's coming, okay.
let's not talk about it. It's fine. So she's coming in March to talk about it. So we should have either the final contract in hand or a prelim if we're, you know, going back to New York for asking for revisions.
Okay.
Would there be a way of getting a map of all the plots of the island and all the plots
Yeah.
that conformed? And so that we can sort of have a sort of a visual of there are this many lots that work and here's who owns them and, you know. So we
Yeah.
have more
Do you
data.
have ADUs?
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing. So we don't necessarily have records of all of that.
The accessory buildings?
No, but
No.
we could figure out what was, so here, I think that there's like a two-part, I think that we could get that from like the planning department, planning board, it exists. So I think that there's, and I think that actually having a tool like that is going to be really important because I know the first question that I had, like I told my husband about it and he was like, well, can we, you know, I was like, I wonder if we could do it. And they were like, we're on the North Shore overlay. And he's, and so I feel like that's going to be the first question of just like, oh, if I even thought I might qualify income wise, is where I am. So I think we should be ready to at least, and hopefully actually, which we're going to talk about your pamphlet, that we can start with, if we had that available, that we could pre-vet people and have some specifics on there of just like, we might have a map there with us to just be like, okay, where are you? Maybe not with names, but where we could kind of show like, oh, you're in the near shore overlay, not you. What's the size of your lot? So we could at least kind of, we don't want to waste anybody's time until such a time and that the zoning becomes, because it is a lengthy process. And my hope is that if we can garner enough enthusiasm, that we'll have a couple folks that'll step forward here at the beginning that'll be good candidates that we can.
Yeah, that's definitely, to me, the idea of having like visuals where we can even say like, this is what, this part of, like, I live on Monantic Road. This is what the status is of the houses on Monantic Road. They exist in such, I don't know what my zoning is, but I know I have enough room to build another house if I wanted on my property. So we could actually show people, what it looks like, just how it looks, those maps. My question though is, thinking ahead, are we talking about wanting to have people ready to listen to stuff in July or in September or
earlier? I would say, my hope would be as early, maybe like June, maybe even May if we could pull it out.
Okay, great.
I think it's really just going to depend on when we have that contract. And I feel like once we have that, then we're going to read through it so that we know what the hell we're talking about. And Gwen knows and her team knows what they're talking about. So we can say true things.
When does the 2 years start?
We need to sign.
When you sign the
So we
contract.
can, okay.
But you don't want to.
We don't want to delay too late, but you can play that a little.
You don't want to play footsie too long,
right.
But that's why I wanted to make sure to get this here so we can start, if we've got a month or two jump on getting our information together to be able to speak to the zoning, get those maps, have a pamphlet that talks about if, where your zoning is, where you're not, and then on her side, she's going to come in with the information around the financial eligibility and the loan. She's going to do that, but we're going to say where, and she's going to show how.
So realistically, April 1st signing sounds.
Yeah, like just by the tax deadline. So that's just perfect. Yes, excellent. I'll be bleeding from my eyes, but yeah, excellent. Yeah.
Better if it could be May, but yeah, okay.
Everybody can extend.
Right.
Get everybody an extension
Extension.
and then worry about it.
California
But I
is
think
extended to May 15th. So
I do think Chris's question is a really good one, though, that the 2 years is the time that it will take to get our families and landlords and tenants together. It's not the time that it takes to actually get any houses.
So you just have to allocate within the 2 years.
Well, that's my understanding,
Okay.
but it depends on how that contract's written.
Got it, okay.
So it all comes down to like, this is like our initial understanding
Yeah,
from the information that New York State put out for this, and then the proposal that we wrote back.
right.
But it's really that legal document that gets signed that's that's the understanding that they have given us and the information we've gotten so far.
So if I'm hearing this,
Yeah.
the number I saw on the need assessment was like 30 units, is that, like, pulling that out of nowhere? Was that a number that was
10
used?
ten
Oh,
in the first 5 years.
Right, but that was sort of like a goal, but like,
yeah.
as a need, like, this would sort of ease the pain of affordable housing. I'm just saying that with the
Yes.
10 there and 16 here,
Yes.
you're very close to,
Yeah.
I think, the needs assessment is a general understanding.
Yeah.
And, the consultants said themselves, very hard to figure out this information
Right.
without literally interviewing everybody on the island.
Sure.
And people are moving
Yeah.
off island constantly. So
So, I mean, yeah, it's like, I'm
it's a
just
moving
thinking,
target until we, wow, I can afford rent.
Right, yeah.
When everybody
yeah,
starts saying
I mean,
that,
if
then
we get to the
then
point
our
where
goal.
we don't need to, and we could just dissolve the board and go home, like, I would be
Have a party.
really happy. So, you
I
know,
was just talking about moving the bar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but no,
yeah.
this is a huge step forward. If we can find 16 people to do it, like, that's gonna make a huge impact.
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I would also, you know, I think this is going to be a lot about outreach. And I think this is also probably going to be a lot of one-on-one once we kind of understand exactly the parameters and we have information that we can go to folks of just like thinking about people that might be, you know, good candidates and kind of the thing that I also want to just be clear on is it is like, you know, a state process. So it's a little clunky and dumb, right? You know?
Yeah.
So I just want to be totally transparent about that. But also it's potentially $200,000. So like,
And
you know, so our job is going to be,
encouraging people to stick with it.
yeah, I think it's also, you know, our job is going to be to help ease, like just try to make this go as smoothly as we can.
Yeah.
At least that's how I see it.
it's also flexible, like the whole ADU program and why people like them is that it's very flexible. You can use it for different things, like seniors, you know, using that for their primary residence and renting out the big house, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you could technically build something new,
Yep.
or you could rehab something that you either already have, or you could, you know, split your house into, you know, so like, that's the flexibility is so awesome.
Yeah, or bring in like the modular thing you
Yeah.
showed last time. Like, that could be plunked down tomorrow.
Yeah, I actually, and just, so you know, that those modular things that I showed you,
Yeah.
I did send that those folks, I got some names of folks that had gotten buildings from them, and I sent them to CDC LI to vet them.
Oh, cool. That's great.
So just to, you know,
I found this on the web.
excellent.
How do we get online here? Is there like a
I
public,
don't know.
what is it? Does it say something?
TSI or TSI Public.
Oh, TSI. Okay, cool. Because I just want to try and get the, is there a password?
Do you want me to talk about, I'm so sick of,
Password's at connect me.
do you want to talk about pamphlets, or do you want me to give an update on the permitting thing while you get online?
Why don't you do your permitting thing? Because I want to be able to share our ADU thing.
Cute, okay. So the first thing I wanted to say is apologies to Peter and Maria. Chris was really helpful, and he's also a very busy guy. He rescheduled about 6 times. So I actually just sat down with him yesterday. At that point, I was just like, and my schedule's totally upside down. So he shared this like super preliminary list with me, and I will make
Great.
copies and get it to everybody. And basically he did a list of all the steps that you need, right? And so he was basically, outlined for health department approval, right? And so he kind of gave me all the lists here, and he said, you know, it looks like you're actually could be through quite a few of these steps based on the conversation that we had with Matt Sherman. So, he encouraged me to go back to Matt Sherman with this list and say, hey, where are we? Did we put in the plans to Suffolk wastewater, or are they to be put in? So I would love to work with somebody else on this too. Maybe that's not working on the pamphlet. And kind of, so he says that once we kind of get the plan in, just to figure out the wastewater flow, and again, we've kind of switched gears here and we're talking about the South Ferry property.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. That basically, once we're through this, that's at the point where we would probably be thinking about putting it out, in his opinion, for an RFP. So the things that he thought that we needed was, he's like, I know this seems silly, but you would be surprised at how often it comes up, but making sure that the town has the title and deed free and clear. He was just like, he was just like, just start there before you even do anything else.
Yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like, okay, I hear you, sir. Basically make sure that it's not only are the plans in, but we would probably be talking to people. And then we would want to wait till it was actually Suffolk wastewater approved what we put in.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing that we talked about, which would be, I'm kind of just like previewing what he said, was thinking about 2 other things. Thinking about how to start the community housing floating zone, like, is that something that we can start? Like, because we've never done it before, but
Right.
we would need it. So we would need to figure out how, because we would want to, before you put it out for RFP, his opinion was, is you would want to have the zoning, you want to have the wastewater, the zoning, the title sorted,
place, yep.
right? And he's like, the great news is the Suffolk wastewater, even if it's already in, is going to take a significant amount of time. So you got a lot, you got a little bit of time to work it out, right? And then the fourth thing that we talked about was just putting together like a base financial model, right? Of just like based on, this is looking at the plans, just the very preliminary plans that we would, when I say plans, I'm talking about like figuring out, is like a 1-bedroom, is it a 2-bedroom, like those kinds of things. How many units are we talking about? So that we could kind of think about the financial model, right? So, he gave me a number, of what this, the current rates per square foot to build, So if you're just like, okay, your wastewater approval would be based on X square footage, it costs you Y to build it, your affordable rents are locked in at this rate, and then you basically back into the model to figure out what the rate of return and basically how much they'd have to put up, does it service the debt, that kind of thing. So you could go to somebody and just be like, okay, you're not going to be a millionaire, but like, this does make sense,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
or, basically also proof it to make sure you're, not losing money. Because then at that point, not only do you need an RFP, you need to figure out grants, right?
Yep.
Great, that's great that you got that. That's a lot.
I know a lot more about this than I wanted to know. So I will make a copy of this. I just got it yesterday morning.
Okay.
And I put chicken scratch all over it, just so that you guys have this as well. And then I was thinking what I would do is I just get this to everybody. And then since I would just put in a call to Matt Sherman just to see where we are. And then I would just update everybody here and put in an inquiry about the title and deed.
Okay.
And if for some reason it's not into Suffolk wastewater, thinking,
To-do list.
well, then honestly, it's probably, we'd want to kind of maybe put a couple of us together to like help figure what does Matt need to get to that next level. So
Okay.
let's just do like a
Yeah.
status. Where in the world are we?
Mhm, mhm.
I can say it has not been, no Suffolk wastewater has been submitted.
Okay,
Surveyed, soil samples, things like that has been done.
the soil sample has been done
Correct. The stage 1 and 2, I believe.
Yeah.
for the ground test, the water. Anyway, I'll send it to you. You'll probably look at this list and go,
Yeah, I can pretty much tell you what's been going on with that, so.
fantastic. Well, I will send it to you. And then, and Peter, if you're cool with this, maybe I'll just put you on the email with Matt Sherman,
Sure.
just to see where we're at.
Yep.
'Cause this is your world.
What does it cost? What does he think it costs to build a flat?
He says 650 and he said it might be low right now.
650, and that's optimistic, or 650 and that's pessimistic?
Yeah, he says 650 and he thinks that's about right. And it might be a little optimistic.
$650 per square foot.
Yes.
And so you can put up a primary dwelling and a secondary.
As of right, yeah.
As of right, yes.
And I can earn rent on both.
Well, these are community housing.
This would be community housing.
These are.
Right, no, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that
Yeah, for
subject
the model.
to,
Yeah, yes,
for the
Yeah.
financial model, I can earn
yeah,
X
yep.
Yes.
Mhm,
and Y
mhm.
times 12, and then the costs are the costs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so my thought would be is let's figure out where they are, and then I might feed you the square footage and the units and the costs and the.
And can the town can't waive taxes, right?
Town-owned property.
It's town-owned property.
So is there property tax on town-owned property?
No, there's no tax on it.
But what if the person who comes in, who does the RFP, what if they own the buildings and not the land?
we'd be leasing them land.
So it would only be,
Still be town property.
I
okay.
think it's a town, no, it's.
But the improvements would be,
Improvements are
right.
owned and they'll subject to a ground lease from.
Right, the ground, you'd have the fee owned by the town and whatever else is owned by, on a lease basis, usually a 99-year lease.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
yeah, we'd have to kind of, I
But
know,
usually those types of leases are subject to tax.
yeah, well, I think that there's, yeah,
On the improvements.
On the improvements, I mean, which it's, you just start not paying the tax on the fee interest.
yeah, so we'd have to figure, the good news is we have a minute to figure it out. But yeah, there would be the property, that potential. So, if maybe the board was able to do something, I also know that like, I believe Fred Thiel put forward some county level legislation about this. So if that rolls through, that might exempt, but of course, who knows in the crystal ball if that'll happen. But yeah, I think my thought would be is you build the model assuming that it would be subject to tax just to make sure the model worked. And then if it doesn't, that's return. I don't know.
Is there anything else the town can do to help? Can they plow, snow removal, right? I mean, even if you think some easy cost thing.
Well, actually, one of the things that Amber and I don't know if you ever got a straight answer from him. We were talking about were we able to potentially maybe help out with some of the septic systems? Right?
Right.
So that would be potential offset the cost, but I don't think we have a clear answer on that.
Ready to get that group together that can answer
Yeah.
CPF and WQI questions.
Yeah. So basically we put it at the inquiry because we're like, well, could you use, open question, don't know, right? Could you use WQI money to offset some of the IA system costs, which would be, for that many units would be not an insubstantial cost if you couldn't, there's like that, there was the property tax thing that I know he mentioned. Was there anything else that you remember from that meeting?
But I mean, it is a possibility depending on how we structure it. As far as like
Yeah.
snow removal, like how we structure.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so sick of talking. Can you tell us about the pamphlet?
Okay, the pamphlet. Brad and I have been working on a pamphlet that was vetted today by Stephen Kiley. We kind of have different visions of what it's supposed to do. Basically, what Brad and I came up with is something that would be very, very heavy on graphics, very much basic details. What is an ADU, a guest cottage, a casita, a mother-in-law unit, describing what it is, and then some of the very basic steps that one would have to go through to build one. Now, we've talked about a lot of details in here. Our vision of what this brochure would do is not give all those exact details. Instead, it would basically outline that building an ADU is very much like building a house. You have to go through the same steps that you would have to go through if you were building a house, which is permits, survey, license, building department, whatever, all that stuff. And then, subject to what we're learning now about what our actual laws are, for instance, right now, the minimum square footage for an ADU, according to town code, is 438 square feet. That seems fine, except there are also tiny houses that are much smaller than that, which are completely adequate for living. So whether or not we want to try and talk to the town about changing that code, I'm not sure. So that's one thing that we're covering. Now, our brochure does not cover anything that has to do with these grants at this point, correct?
So I would recommend that they don't.
That's what I thought.
Because that she's getting, like, the CDCLI is going to be kind of talking about that. So this
is informational about what an ADU is in the town of Shelter Island.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea. I'm also wondering, and is it maybe, I do think that the details are important, and maybe they're not in this pamphlet, but I know that all that technical stuff is gonna come up. So I'm just trying to wonder how, if it's
Well,
not.
that's why you
Yeah.
have to, I mean, basically what we, and I'm sorry, I don't have access to the internet. I can't
No
remember
worries.
that password that you just gave me and all that stuff. But basically what we say is that you have to come to the town to get the rest of the details. I do want to add this, though. One of the things that we have in there is that if you are interested in ADU, you need to get on the rental registry. In other words, if you are a person who's going to possibly want to live in an ADU. So I do think that is important, right?
Okay.
Because talking about our earlier conversation, where are the people going to come from who want to live in these ADUs? The ADUs that we're talking about are ADUs that would be affordable units, though technically you could build an ADU that is not an affordable unit. I mean,
But then, yes,
right?
Not with this grant, but yes.
No, not with
In
this
the
grant,
world.
but if
In
you
the
wanted
world.
Go for
to,
it.
on your property, you could build a little guest house and rent it out to maybe an employee or something over the course of a full year. It doesn't have anything to do with the rental registry. You already know who you think should live there. Or you're doing the aging in place and your own kids are gonna rent the big house in front. So that would just be a small detail. I think that we want it in there. But the main purpose of the brochure that we wanted to get across is what is an ADU? When we had all of our preliminary public meetings, there was an extraordinary amount of misinformation and also people who just didn't even know what the term ADU stood for. Simple as that, accessory dwelling unit. So getting that kind of information across, and also I think it would be useful because then that will help people know that there's actually going to be, that when we do decide that we're going to have public conversations about this grant
Yeah.
stuff, they'll already know what an ADU is and whether or not that's something that they're interested in, that they want to come to a public information session and find out, is that something I want to build? Do I have incentives, et cetera? So that's our goal with the brochure, essentially, is
Yeah.
colorful, smart, not every single technical detail, but certainly doesn't overlook or put us in any kind of legal peril because we forgot to put something in, you know.
Well, on that, the place where you would want more details, why not direct them to our webpage and
Correct.
have an FAQ?
Yeah,
Yeah, and and
that would be it.
yeah.
So,
I think-
I mean, otherwise you'll never get the,
No.
but then, I mean, it's just, there's layers upon layers, because when you talk about what zone you're in, then you have to just look at the code, because there's no,
yeah, but you can explain that in,
Right. no,
if you don't want to explain that in a pamphlet, you can say
No, but
that in
we-
an FAQ.
Well, I
but
think.
we can link to all those things.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that there's like two pieces of it, and I think it's so smart because I think that like
Come talk to
sometimes
the
like we
department.
get so like I will speak for myself. I get so like inside baseball that I'm just like, well, of course everybody knows what ADU is, but like
No.
no,
They don't.
actually no.
Trust me,
So like
it's-
let's start there.
It's very much about
And then-
letting people know what that is, what the basic general outlines of an ADU and how it fits into the character and the life of the town of Shelter Island.
So Ben, maybe there's two pieces. Maybe there's like this informational pamphlet, and maybe there's a technical FAQ.
I
that we
agree.
could
I
either
think that's a
put-
great
that we put
suggestion.
together to
You'll
bring-
never
We're
get,
never gonna get anything written.
No, it's fine. And that we basically can put up on the website,
Yeah,
and that we could even have a printout at these public informations for like people who
definitely.
are like,
well, the FAQ is always able to be updated.
yes,
The
exactly.
pamphlet, it's outdated the
Yeah.
day it's issued.
Yeah, that's one
Yeah.
thing about it, yeah.
okay,
But it's nice to have something to hand out
Oh, always.
at these meetings.
yeah.
It will always be an accessory dwelling unit or an in-law unit or a granny flat or a casita or a guest cottage or a tiny house, or I was trying to think of some of the other things that they're called. But the AARP does a really, really good one, and they have tons of descriptions of what ADUs are. I'm gonna copy some of those.
I like it.
Yeah, so that's where we are, and I'm happy to share the draft with you guys once we've got all our emails. Liz got to see it, and I will CC everybody else on our team. And Steve Steve, the lawyer, looked at it and had his take on it. So we're gonna just continue to pursue it and make it look really beautiful and have something that everybody likes.
Do you guys think that you'll be in a good space to maybe have like something like semifinal for February?
March?
You mean for a March
Yeah,
meeting?
I-
Yes.
It's like you're in it already here.
I
Yes.
don't-
Yes,
I do.
without a doubt, yes, we will.
We're moving now.
Yeah,
I think we're moving.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm
We're
in
on it.
denial.
Okay, yeah, and we'll talk to Gwen next time.
Yeah.
Did I cover everything, Brent?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I think we're in a draft.
Yeah.
Moving on.
So if you're building at 700 a foot for a casita,
Okay.
and there are 1,000 places on this island, let's say, 1,000 lots that work.
Mhm.
I don't think there's that many.
Not
But I love the dream. I love the dream.
Right.
Please continue, sir.
500 or 600, that would be all of them in our current zoning law. But that's.
So without changing zoning, we have 500 potential people who should take a pamphlet, and it's going to cost them 500 a foot to build a 400 square foot dwelling.
Well, I just did some brief math. Let's say they did a 500 square foot dwelling.
Right.
At 650, that's 325,000.
325.
Right, so
And what's the most I can rent that out? 16?
I believe it depends on,
It's more. That number was like 3 years old.
yeah, I
Yeah.
believe it's more than that. And also,
But
yeah,
Southampton, I'll dig that up. When you guys
Yeah.
have email, I'll dig up the current number. Southampton has a good breakdown.
I mean, one thing that's not clear to me in our conversations that I do want to be clear on, when we're talking about income eligibility, the income eligibility is for those individuals who are renting the ADUs. You don't have to have a certain income to build an ADU
Well,
unless you qualify, you want
do
to
the grant.
qualify for
Yeah,
the grant.
yeah.
Okay, so do
Yeah.
they have, is that an income cutoff that we know what that is, or that's?
I do,
To be
I do,
determined.
no, Gwen knows.
Okay, so
I
she'll
do
present
not,
all of that.
I do not immediately have it on recollection.
Because-
we were talking about, what, was it like the median of like our zone, or was it the median of our county? Or, and I was like, oh, that's a big difference. Can you please find out? So,
Right,
yeah.
okay. The reason I bring it up is because when we were doing we were doing outreach all summer, at the different markets and everything, and I had that one lady come up to me and she was like, we have this big house, we have so much land, I would really love to build something, like make it affordable housing, what do I get to do, what do I have to do? And I said, well, give me your name.
Right.
Give me your name and I'll figure it out. But what she did say when I talked to her later is that her own neighbors told her, you're not allowed to build anything and you're not allowed to rent it out. Now, I don't remember what neighborhood she lived
Probably
in.
near shore overlay.
So maybe that's what it was. She was a new resident.
Yeah.
But the only reason I bring it up is that I do think that we could have, and I hope we have, individuals who have disposable incomes who still want to be part of the ADU or affordable housing project in general. You know what I mean? Not just people who are of median income, but people who actually are wealthy people who have the means to be able to do something. I just want to make sure it's also appealing to all types.
What's a 500 square foot new build unit going to rent for at market rates?
Well, the market rates now, I mean, people pay
How many bedrooms in that 5,000?
Well, it's 500, so I
Probably one
mean,
bedroom.
one bedroom, right? It's not,
2 bedroom.
Card
Well,
scabbing.
people are paying between $2,000 and $3,000 a month
Yeah, I would say
now.
if it's 2 bedroom, $3,000.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what it is. This is the fair market rent documentation system. So for fiscal year 2023, a 1-bedroom was 1,914, a 2-bedroom was 2,297. So this is fair market rents. That,
For Suffolk County.
yeah, for Suffolk County. But the reason I'm kind of snorting at it is because people charge way more than this. So these are just,
Those are the HUD rates.
Those are the,
yeah,
that's
these are the HUD rates.
that would be like the affordable rates.
Yeah, those are the affordable rates. Market rate would be, as you said,
Whatever you can get.
whatever you can get. And
I'm just saying, even if somebody built 25 market rate units, it's gonna soften the market, right?
Right.
I mean, so
Yeah.
more is better, even if
Yeah.
if they
Sure,
charge more.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could just create some mobility, that would be great. In other words, people who aren't stuck in one place for the rest of their lives that they can never get out of because they don't have any money, you know?
Could we have on the website, just sort of click on my home site and see if I qualify?
That's a great idea, couldn't we?
Should be. Even if it takes somebody,
I know, I was like, that
Takes,
sounds like a,
we'll get back to you, just click. Then it goes to the committee
Well,
and
what if-
building department or someone and like,
but what did it, yeah, we could do something where basically I would probably send an email. I don't know if we could automate it with the GI, like the GIS survey, but one of the things that Gwen had brought up was just like maybe after the public information survey session, basically having like the next day or basically having signups, just be like, think you qualify, come and do a quick round robin where you could just like sit there and we just like, we're just sitting there with the maps and just be like, okay, where are you? Like, and just maybe it's like Reed and someone from the planning department and someone or the building department, someone from the planning board who could just literally sit there and quickly vet people. Of just
Why, does it really need to be does it have to be that specific? Can't it be like, if you're on Monantic Road between the tuck shop and Bowditch Road, then all of those houses are such and such zoning.
Well, here's the thing. This is my understanding, is that there's like the thing that Chris brought up, there's non-conforming lots. So you could be in the right zone, but if your lot is of a certain size, which.
Like Jasper Road is a great example of everything on this side of Jasper Road is too small to legally build an accessory on.
Right.
Even though it's zoned to have an accessory, they're just all under 1 acre.
Got it.
Yeah.
So they're not allowed to legally build an accessory.
Yeah, see-
Half acres there.
Yeah, see, it really is unfortunately pretty complicated where you would want to have those GIS survey maps and you would want to have somebody who could look at like, okay, what's your plot? What size is that? Who would be able to, and the good news is like, we have folks that could do it, but it would take a person and I just wouldn't want to get somebody excited and just be like, I'm sorry, you're on a half acre and you're near shore overlay,
Right.
so kick a rock,
Right.
Well,
Right.
I just mean, if you get 85 people to come into a group meeting and 73 of them don't meet it, and we could have self-vetted them
Yeah,
right? Is there something that we can do where almost a targeted thing where we find out the number of lots, if there's 500 lots, and we know
I'm
those.
throwing out a crazy number.
No, but
yeah. I love it though, I love
do
it.
the homework ahead of time and figure out, these are the lots that work.
Yeah.
Yeah. we
If
could.
you live in these lots, and send a mailer, send a mailer to those people
It's a really
and
easy thing to do with the GIS,
Yeah,
Sort of like exclude these, exclude this. I don't know if a corner of the property is in the near shore overlay, if that excludes the whole property or if the near shore overlay
it does.
follows the whole, okay, so, I mean, whatever, it just, but
So we could either go, I think we go at it both ways, right? We both target the people that we think are, maybe we could send them a mailing or we could figure out how to get in touch with them. And then the other way is we would want to have it be public because there might be people who are not qualifying, but they're just
Right.
curious about it.
Yeah.
And so maybe at the same time that we're targeting those folks that we know are going to qualify, we're also putting forward public information with those FAQs so that you can pre-vet yourself. So maybe you're just coming because you're curious. That's fine. But you could also, you would have the tools to figure out, at least very preliminarily, if you were qualified. So maybe it's an FAQ.
I think also it's not a bad thing if 75 people come to the meeting and are disqualified,
Yeah.
because that puts, then, you have 75 people who are mad they're not going to get $125,000 to build a thing. And that puts political pressure to change the zoning,
Yeah,
which is
Yeah.
the main reason all of this is so complicated.
Yeah, that's so true.
Thank you, Fran. That's a good point.
I was
Or they
going
also
to-
might know somebody, you know?
Well, that's true. I was
They might
also going to ask though regarding, I mean, that's why we wanted to have the community housing zoning overlay something or another, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that part of the conversation as well? Because if they have a non-conforming lot.
Well, hold on.
We can grant them the.
It's
community housing license.
non-conforming lot, but it won't work in the nearshore overlay. So there's some stuff it can override and some stuff it can't.
But for instance, like Jasper Road is a good example. It's not in the North Shore overlay,
Right.
but it has these weird little lots. But that's a place where we would have been able to use or could use the community housing overlay,
Yeah.
right? Possibly. These are the kind of things that would be on our FAQ,
Yeah.
right? Okay. But I do love the idea of a button.
Oh, Chris
That you could just
Chris has a feeling and something to say.
Okay.
The community housing floating zone as opposed to
Floating.
the special community housing license.
Yeah,
The special the community housing floating zone is overly complicated and a terrible avenue to try and get this figured out for someone, let's say, 6 months from now is trying to apply for that to then hopefully get approval to be able to get $125,000 towards building an accessory or something like that.
I think Chris is right. It's like probably the community housing license and like the floating zone would be for like the South Ferry. Like that's worth doing a.
Well, right, so the floating zone can be, anyone can apply for it for their lot. But that, it's just like a whole crazy thing of like, to the housing board, to the planning board, back to the housing board, then to the town board and.
Yeah, there was actually a property that came up in the last 2 weeks where it was kind of put forward, like, is there a way to get it done? And I had put out that thing and they were just like, wah.
Yeah.
And like, yeah.
But that process doesn't have to be that complicated. A resolution can change that.
thank you. I'm going to put down resolution.
I would say about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that process is like, it kind of comes from the planning board. And so, you know, there is an opportunity there to maybe, it would be partnering with the town board to help change that process and working with the planning board to figure out how to streamline it. All those things are possible. Okay, it's 8:12, so we're like over by 12 minutes, guys.
I just have one quick thing.
Yeah.
I sent everybody, except for David, Bill, and Mark, because I don't have your email addresses yet, the website for the GIS map. I don't know if you guys have ever been on it. Sometimes I go on it for hours. Just
Wow.
going and
It
clicking.
is fun.
It gives so much information. You click on the tax map number onto the card, it's called.
Yeah.
And you can see if anybody does have an accessory dwelling or any improvements and everything. It's not 100% accurate, but it's
Right.
good.
Great.
The near shore overlay is probably a good third of Shelter Island. Because we have so many creeks and everything, so it really gets.
How come it's so hard for us to get little 500 square foot houses, but you can do a 15,000 square foot house without much,
That's a different
pushback.
department.
Let's keep forward Peters to us.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Coco can do it. She has it, so she'll do
Oh,
it.
thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you, Coco.
Also, Bill, if you literally just search Suffolk County GIS.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Or
Yeah.
Shelter, but you.
Shelter-
I just
Shelter
put
Island
the link
GIS.
there. Yeah, the link is right there. You just click on it and it'll just say, I agree, and go into it. You really gotta zoom in for it, though.
Okay.
All right, I'm just gonna go over, I just wanted to do just like a little recap
There it is.
of,
Somebody just put it up.
oh, there it is, look. Boop, boop, boop.
Oh,
All right.
fun. Funno.
I'm zooming.
All right, just to recap,
Cool.
Gwen O'Shea is gonna be here next month, which is not February, but in fact.
March. And in fact, I think we
Yeah.
already have our.
And
Dates set, don't we?
yep, and then the housing plan public hearing is closed, so that will go up. So if all the stars align, that will be approved by the next time we see each other. Fran and Maria, it seems like they'll have a pretty cool draft to show
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
I will have I will send out Chris Fooking's notes. and give an update. I will also send that update by email when I talk to Matt as to where we are in the process. Everybody put your thinking caps on around questions we want to ask Gwen.
Okay.
Do we have any other old business that they didn't get to?
Nope.
Does anybody have any new business?
When is the next meeting? March what?
9th.
Okay.
When is the thought about discussing the lottery?
That is a really good question. So I would,
It's going to be really difficult.
yeah, so let me tell
It's
you,
not going to be, there's so many.
yeah, so let me tell you some things that I can tell you. So on January 13th, there was a meeting for members of the town board and the community housing chairs and the housing authority members for all the impacted communities who basically passed the legislation. And Fred Thiel was there and Palumbo and whatever, right? So we had like a big sit down talk about how to do that. And that was one of the issues that came up. And so basically there was, Stephen Kiley and I talked about it, and they were talking about, he and I were on email, I don't think I've gotten an update, but all the town attorneys are dealing with the same issue, right? And so I kind of put it out to him of just, hey, and Fred Thiel is also a lawyer. So I think what we would be looking for is an update from Stephen as to kind of what their legal minds kind of came to and how they want to approach it, because it's thorny, it's difficult. And we want to make sure that we are both serving our community in the way that they want. And also we need to make sure that we're abiding by fair housing law, and both in letter and in spirit, and figuring out how to do that without.
Well, they do it, they've done it, so
Well-
it works. Not here.
Well,
I
anyway,
can't speak to here, but they've done it on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket and
Well-
Rhode Island, so.
And there is self-selection on certain things. There's
Yeah.
notification issues. What is sufficient notification of the
Right.
lottery? Where does it go? And how far do you have to do it? Do you want to do preferences? Do you not want to do preferences? How much of preferences do you want to do? If you do preferences, how much risk is the town willing to take? I mean, because a lot of it is just risk management.
yeah, no, and I think
So, I mean, it's going to be, it's a long conversation.
no, it is a long conversation.
But if we're getting to the point where something might actually happen, it's a conversation that starts to need to be begun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can put it out to Kylie just to see where he and the other town councils are in that conversation, if they have something that they're ready to come back to everybody with.
Could maybe he come at some point to a meeting here?
Yeah.
But
Probably not
everyone's
March.
having the
March is
same
when?
problems, right?
Yeah.
Everybody
Has the same problems.
Yeah, everybody's got the
So
same
is there a common, right, ground rules that are created and sort of we live under the blanket of?
Well, here's the thing is that I think
This is how
the
everyone does
issue is, how I understand it, is people have different interpretations and they don't agree on the interpretations. And sometimes people get sued and sometimes they don't. And sometimes maybe they should. And sometimes maybe they get sued and they shouldn't. And so it's just like, it is fraught. It is a complicated legal question.
There's no dispositive.
Yeah.
But if I meet
Information out there.
the income test and I work in Amagansett, there's nothing that keeps me from getting affordable housing on Chiltern, if I want, right?
Right, but the question would be, do we give a preference in the lottery, sort of how many balls you get in the NBA?
Right.
Right. Like if I'm a firefighter, do I get more chances than you?
And that's
That's
always,
fraud part.
it's a fraud.
Yeah.
And notification. We just put a little notification in the reporter. Is that sufficient? Or should we have a broader
Put it in
notification?
The Economist.
Yeah.
No, put it in the Paris Review.
Right, yeah. So,
Also take into account if somebody is going for an affordable house, commuting to Amagansett can get costly on a monthly
Yep.
basis.
Yeah.
That's gonna be hard.
I think we have a lot of
It's
self-selection.
very self-selected. I mean, based on what that great flyer was, that, what's her name?
But that's
gave
why
us
you
from
get into the
East
risk
Hampton.
management part. Maybe you don't need to
Casey.
do as many preferences because you got self-selection. You can drive yourself into a complete pretzel.
Yeah. I will check in.
I think our goal is to make it as uncomplicated as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the lawyers are gonna tell us what to do, and we're gonna listen to that advice, and our goal is to make it easy to apply.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the town board has to make the decision because it's a risk. They have to decide how much risk they're willing to take.
Yep. Actually, before we make a motion, Julie, I see you there. Did you have any questions before we?
Just one, is the
Yeah.
grant coming to Shelter Island and the CDC, or does it come to the CDC where they could share it with other communities?
That's a great question, Julie. So the grant is coming through CDC LI, but it can only be spent, the 2 million can only be spent on Shelter Island.
Excellent, thank you,
Yeah, they're just administering it for here.
terrific.
Great.
Thank you.
Does anybody feel like making a motion?
Make a motion.
Oh,
Thank you.
all right. Second, meeting dismissed. Thanks for the good times. See you in
1 month.
March.